Welcome everyone to our second Advisors in Residence session of 2023. Tonight with our executive team. So my name is Jamie Clay. I'm the director of the Young Leaders Program. For anyone who I haven't met before, but I think I've met most of you, or if not all of you. I'm excited, to have so many alumni with us tonight. And I know some new people who haven't joined this session last year. So welcome. I also wanted to quickly just remind you to introduce yourselves in the chat and where you're Zooming from. I'm Zooming from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania tonight. I also wanted to announce something really exciting for us. We have our very first Young Leaders Program intern, and she is also joining us tonight. So everyone say hi to Polly. We're so excited to have you and that you could join us tonight. And then we might be, I'm not seeing her, but we might also have an additional staff member, Genevieve, joining us, and Jesse is also here with Michelle and I to help us with the session. So thank you all for joining us. So just a reminder, our advisor session is part of our learning component, and our executive team is here to help our alumni prepare to take on the finance, operations, and marketing and customer experience challenges and opportunities that present themselves regardless of your vocation. So we're super excited to bring back 2 advisors from 2022 and 2 advisors for 2023, all who are joining us from across the country. So advisors, if you haven't already, please also put in the chat where you are Zooming from. We also have some resources that they have selected for you just to broaden your education. And we'll be putting those into the chat, and we'll also share those after the event in our follow-up email. So don't worry about scrambling to write them down. We will send them to you. Okay, so our advisors returning, we have Denise Bell. She's a talent strategy and professional and consultant with 23 years of professional experience, including 11 years at Mercer. She's also a mentor to one of our Chicago scholars, and as I mentioned, a returning advisor. And she has shared 2 articles with you, including advice I would give my 20-year-old self. Also returning is Eric Goldstein. So Eric has 27 years of professional experience and a 6-year Antares career. Antares really helped us get started in Illinois. They were one of our first corporate partners to get us launched, which is super exciting. And since then, they've really become a national partner of Greenhouse, helping us even outside of Illinois. So thank you again, Eric, for joining us. He has a book recommended for you guys called Ask More. It's 10 questions to negotiate. So it's all about negotiation, which seems really cool. And then our new advisors, we have Ben Bressler. So Ben has a really cool 35-year business that's focused on travel called Natural Habitat Adventures. And that business was the 2021 Newsweek Future of Travel Award winner. He's also a past symposium speaker, so some of you might remember him from Symposium. And he has a really cool video we have to share with you that some of you might have seen already called Making Travel Meaningful. And then we have Dr. Roz. So Dr. Roz is the Director of Organizational Development at the Boys and Girls Club of America. She has a 24-year nonprofit career, which is, really amazing in that sector. She was named Leading Lady by O, other known as Oprah's magazine, and was named one of Chicago's emerging leaders. And she has an amazing set of resources that she sent us for you guys, including videos in a book and a video, The Mindset of a Winner, which is an interview with Champions Advice Kobe Bryant, which I think might be, a heartfelt video to watch. So all of these advisors are amazing people, amazing professionals who are skilled at strategic planning, execution, and problem solving, know their way around a balance sheet, which can be very tricky, can solve logistical challenges, communicate with clarity, and above all, and in some ways, most importantly, are positive contributors and also drivers of healthy organizational cultures. All right, so quickly, just to go over the agenda, we did change things up a little bit based on your feedback and feedback from the advisors. So we not only change this from year to year, but we also change it from session to session to make these better and better. So we'll start off with advisor introductions, then go into our panel discussion that's focused on defining your professional career in your 20s. Alumni as advisors introduce themselves and participate in the panel. Just start thinking about what questions you have for them. You'll get to ask them during the Q&A as well in the breakout groups. If you can, please keep your camera on. We understand if you have to turn it off. Right before the breakout sessions, Michelle is going to take her famous group photos of us all for us to use and share. And after the breakout groups, and Michelle will explain that a little later, we'll do a quick wrap up and an event close. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to start with our advisor introductions. We'll start with Ben and then followed by Denise, Eric, and Dr. Roz. So we are asking our advisors when they introduce themselves to also answer the question, what was a career-defining moment that allowed you to see you were ready for an executive role? So Ben, over to you.
My career is a little bit odd because I wasn't ready for anything or any part of it. When I graduated from college, I became a prep school teacher in New Hampshire, and I taught 7th grade boys history. And I was really, the headmaster told me this many times, I was the world's worst teacher. And after that, I started my own company. I saved $600 driving a garbage truck in an amusement park in New Jersey. And I said, I'm going to start an adventure travel company taking kids skiing, because that's what I did in the spring break of teaching, right? And we mutually left the school. I was told I'm not coming back, and I didn't want to come back anyway. So the bottom line was I was ready to become an executive of my own company, because there was no way I was getting hired somewhere else. I mean, that sounds self-effacing when our company has become so large and we've done well. But it is absolutely the truth. At 22 years old, starting a company, you do that because, man, I don't want to work for somebody else, or I really don't have many opportunities. So that was the career defining moment for me, was having a headmaster tell me, Bressler, you're really not qualified.
Thank you, Ben. We have some young and budding entrepreneurs on the call, so I know they can resonate and appreciate your story. Okay, Denise.
All right, Denise Bell. Jamie introduced me, but from Mercer, a global HR consulting firm, formerly a principal talent strategy consultant. So I consulted on things like helping companies restructure their HR function, DEI types of consulting engagements, and also helping companies set up succession plans for their leaders. A career-defining moment for me was when I found myself becoming a trusted advisor for our U.S. leadership team. I was able to facilitate discussions with them, recommend things. They took action on things I recommended, and that kind of let me know I was ready to operate at a higher level. So that was a career-defining moment for me.
Very cool. All right, Eric, you're up next.
Great. Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you, Eric Goldstein. So I am today in my basement in New Jersey, but I work in New York City. I am the chief risk officer of a company called Antares Capital. Antares lends money to private equity funds buying mid-sized companies in sort of the private credit space, they call it these days. As Jamie mentioned, I've been with Antares for a little over 6 years. Prior to that, I spent 18 years at Goldman Sachs, worked in their merchant bank, basically an alternative investment manager, effectively. And then prior to that was with Ernst & Young, where I started my career in public accounting. So for me, a career-defining moment would be, so prior to Antares, as I mentioned, I was with Goldman Sachs. I was, held many leadership roles in more of like a finance, administration, operations role, running our funds and our business, and really helped to manage a small division within a very large corporation. And I was looking to make a move, and met with a former colleague who had retired, who I respected, who then, based on what I described I wanted, put me in touch with folks at Antares. And I think their, vision for me to now move from, again, helping to run a small division within an investment bank to a leadership team, helping to run what in many ways was kind of a 20-year-old startup at the time. I can go into that a little bit later, but the business was carved out of GE and was bought standalone. And so her, the discussions with her and her vision for the role that I could play really added to the, preparation that I felt my prior career had positioned me for. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about it, but the idea of mentorship and sponsorship comes into play.
That's awesome. Thank you, Eric. I also want to say your basement is way more inviting than the one I have at home.
Is that because of the cotton candy machine behind me? Or?
I mean, all of it just looks really nice. All right, Dr. Ross, you are up.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. So for me, I've always been I grew up an only child, but in the household with my mom and all of her siblings. So I was almost like baby sister, but also the first and eldest grandchild. So I've always taken on organically a leadership role. And a career defining moment for me that allowed me to see that I was ready for an executive role was when I unintentionally but successfully led a major company planning initiative. I was working for a local nonprofit in Chicago as a program director when I was literally thrown into a strategic planning lead role. The project required me to collaborate across departments, to manage a large team that also included board members. So it was the most frightening experience, but I also wanted to make sure I represented the organization well, because these board members were also donors, and one of the board members involved also served as my mentor and executive coach. So during this project, my coach, he told me that I had the capacity to take on greater responsibilities and make a broader impact within the organization. This experience kind of highlighted my aptitude for managing cross-functional teams, developing executive strategies, some of those things that are imperative for leadership roles. So it was a really pivotal moment for me that made me to recognize, after my coach kind of saw something in me, that I was ready to take on executive level responsibilities, because initially I said, I never want to be an executive. Like, I had seen my predecessors work day in, day out, weekend, and I value having my space. So it was something that I didn't think I was interested in, but the partnership with a proven leader who served as my coach, someone who really believed in me, he challenged me to think bigger about the contributions that I could make, not only to my organization, but to the nonprofit profession as a whole. So that was kind of how I pivoted into executive leadership.
Thank you. Someone who's also spent her entire career in nonprofits, I appreciate hearing your story.
Thank you.
All right, go into our advisor panel discussion, defining your professional career in your 20s. So we're just going to get to it. All right, so our first question of the evening, Dr. Ross, this is going to go to you first, and then to Ben. So our question is, what skills do you remember working on, or mistakes you learned while in your 20s that you think positively contributed to your success today?
I don't know where exactly to begin. First off, I stopped counting at the age of 27, so technically I'm still in my 20s. In fact, last Saturday, I celebrated the 20th anniversary of my 27th birthday, so yay. But there are some skills that I honed and lessons learned that definitely contributed to who I am and my success today. One that I think is most important is communication. During my 20s, I quickly discovered that being able to express myself clearly and concisely was like finding the holy grail of adulting, right? It was as if a magical switch flipped, transforming me from this mumbling mess into sometimes seemingly a smooth talker. And that was also important for me because I grew up with a stutter, stammer, and lisp and had to go through speech therapy. So even communication skills and the confidence in communicating, like once upon a time, I could have never sat on a forum like this, but communication from the perspective of speaking concisely and clearly with clarity, but also I believe that communication is the solve for most issues. So understanding how to communicate expectations, how to communicate my thoughts, my feelings, and those sorts of things with colleagues, especially in the business space, is one of the skills that I found really, really important. And then one other one is learning from failures. I've been a bit of a perfectionist throughout my life, but like anyone and like everyone, I've made mistakes and experienced setbacks, especially during my 20s. So realizing that failures are just opportunities to learn from and a pedestal for growth is something that it took me a long time to like just really overcome fearing failure and learning to fail fast so that I can quickly learn, adapt, and adjust from those failures. Allowed me to be better with decision makings. It allowed me to be more resilient, to approach challenges differently, and to take risk. So those are two things, two big things: communication and learning from failures and not fearing failure.
Thanks. I love that. It's, I think something that should be brought up more is that failure happens and we just need to learn from it. So thank you for sharing that. All right, Ben.
Thanks, Dr. Raj. You are good at communicating. That's great. Thanks. The two areas that I think that I learned in my 20s, one would be to find your purpose and pursue it. And I think that's just so important to figure out what your purpose is. Now, when I say pursue it could be that you start your own company and that's what you're doing, or you get into something that is right exactly what your passion is. If you enjoy cycling, do something with cycling if you enjoy. For me, it's nature travel, and I started. So you can go and start something like that, or you can join a company that is something like, look, I have a real passion for, let's say it was cycling. Well, but I'm a finance guy. I can join a cycling tour company or a bike tour company or whatever that, and be in finance within one of those companies. So, maybe your passion is toaster ovens, but if your passion is bicycling and you're joining a toaster oven company to be a head of finance, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much, right? There's nothing wrong with toaster ovens. Who doesn't love a great sandwich, right? So that's one thing, is find your purpose and pursue something around that. And the other one is focus. As an entrepreneur, if any of you are thinking of entrepreneurialism in your pursuits, focus is the hardest thing. Find out what drives your economic engine as a company, what meets your purpose as a company, what's behind the why of why you do it, and focus on that. Do one thing and do it great. If you're trying to do a lot of things, that works for Amazon or Target or Walmart or even the corner Conoco station, but it doesn't work for most businesses. So find your focus and focus on it every single day, because it's so easy to spend your time doing things that are ancillary to the company's purpose or driving your economic engine. I say that, because you put those things together. If you have a purpose and you're not making money, you're not going to be able to pursue your purpose. Your business is going to go away. So focus and your purpose are the two things.
Thank you. I loved your toaster example. That's great. Okay, so next question, kind of similar, but a little bit different. Some of us in the room, it's been a couple of decades or so since we were in our 20s. So thinking about what skills do you think people in their 20s should be working on today? So maybe a little different than when, some of us were in our 20s. So we're going to start with Eric with this question and then go to Denise.
Sure. So a number of things, not surprising, kind of pop into mind, but maybe I'll touch on three. The first I would say is relationship building. I think each of these three can touch on elements that I think were just discussed, but relationship building is really important. I think as you grow in your careers and you're learning and trying to figure out that passion that was just described by Ben, meeting a lot of people, understanding what they do, and really making those connections early on, I think is really important. And it might kind of come across as, oh, well, of course I'm meeting people and I'm making relationships, but there's really an intentional aspect to that I'm focused on, where you want to meet a lot of people, but you want to have some method to remember who those people were and where you met them and how you met them, and try to, in a more strategic way, remain in contact with them in some way over an extended period of time. So I'd say being intentional about relationship building is important to know. I'd say in a role, consistency is important. So you want to be viewed as a go-to person in your organization, taking advantage of some of the things that other people might not want to necessarily do, and always doing those things well. So, again, being consistent, I think, is an important skill to focus on. And then the third is the point that was made initially on communication skills. I think that's very, people talk about it, but I don't think there's enough emphasis focused on communication skills and the importance of that. As you grow in your career, at the end of the day, you're going to have all this expertise and you're going to be looking to kind of take on the next opportunity, but most of the other people are going to have that same experience level and expertise level. And the differentiator at the end of the day, I think, comes in large degree to your ability to communicate and connect with people, as was discussed earlier. So those would be three things I would bring into the conversation.
So what I'd add to that on the relationship building, you want to maintain your network. The people that you were friends with in college, you guys have all gone on to different companies, different professions. You don't know where you may go in your career next. Someone who you used to be in college with may be at a company that you want to join later. And when you're job searching, it's easier to reach out to a friend and have them refer you. So having those networks create links. So don't forsake the people that you have relationships with in college. Try to keep in contact with people. That's something that I wish I would have done better early on, but I didn't really see the value of it early on. Analytics. So if you're in corporate, even if you're starting your business, the fourth industrial revolution is all about data and the digitization of data. Where HR and marketing didn't do a lot of data analysis before, it's here to stay now. So having command of Excel, being able to use pivot tables, it's even going beyond Excel now, but that's kind of like table stakes now. Make sure you build analytic skills because it will come in handy. With respect to, I'm going to go back to communication, but take a different slant. Whether you're starting your own business or you're in corporate, understanding your audience is important. So when you're giving a presentation, you need to think about who you're presenting to, because then the information that you provide is going to be a little different. If it's very senior level people, you're going to keep it high level and get to the point. If it's more tacticians, you're going to get into more of the detail. And then most importantly, managing up, being able to communicate to your manager, making sure they're aware of what you're working on, what you've accomplished. So then when they're giving a report of their direct reports to their manager, you've made it easy for them to talk about you and to advocate for all that you've done. I think those are the three that I would focus on.
Thank you. I love your mention about relationships and just maintaining those and how important they are. I think even relationships with your fellow employees is very important, to, not burn bridges where possible, things like that. Greenhouse is really big on, building those relationships with colleagues as part of our culture. We really focus heavy on our culture at Greenhouse. So Dr. Roz and Eric, you've made your way through your industries. While you were looking for jobs, how did you know it was the right culture fit? And Dr. Roz, we'll start with you.
For me, first I'll say when I interview for positions, I'm not trying to just win the role or get the job. I'm also interviewing the company. So that's really, really important when you're thinking about fit, making sure that you're not the only one under evaluation, that you're also evaluating. So you always want to go in with questions. The same way interviewers today love to ask you those behavioral interview questions about, give me an example when. I encourage you all to do the same when you're going through that interview process as well. Because for me, it's very important that I understand the values of an organization and not just what they have in writing, not just what their diversity, equity, and inclusion statement says, but how those things look in practice. So I want to understand team dynamics and collaboration. I think that team dynamics and the level of collaboration within an organization is extremely important. A supportive and inclusive work environment where teamwork is actually encouraged, allowed, in that where diverse perspectives are valued and not punished, is crucial for me to really thrive and be able to be engaged. Will I be able to show up in this space being my authentic self? What's the company culture? What's the work life? I try not to use the word balance because I believe in living and leading a more integrated life, because when you start balancing, it just doesn't really work for me. But what type of flexibility is offered? Are there expectations for you to work sun up, sun down? If I decide to do that, that's on me. But are there corporate expectations within the culture for you to do that? So really understanding those types of dynamics, what types of benefits are offered within the organization, and not just the benefits and the typical traditional health benefits, the pay, salary, compensation, those sorts of things, but some of those non-monetary things. One of the most important for me being professional development opportunities. I truly and highly value continuous learning and growth. So I always look for organizations that invest in its people, who invest in employee development, offer training programs or access to such programs, mentorship opportunities. I mentioned earlier having an executive coach, and I think that's something that's really, really important. So companies that actually offer that to its employees or provide access, and other avenues for expanding skills and advancing professionally. So those are some of the things that I really, really look at: the overall organization culture and their true and authentic commitment to that culture. How I'm able to show up as a member of the team. Is collaboration fostered and even promoted within the organization? Having an integrated life and some flexibility within the workspace. And are there professional development and other non-monetary benefits that may have a monetary value, but that are really, really valuable to me? And that starts with kind of knowing who you are, what your needs are, and what your expectations are of organizations.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. Maybe I'll just build on a couple of pieces, because I think culture is the number one, I think, important thing. That sense of belonging is really important. And I never realized how, now we're talking about that a lot more. And so in our company, but I think even more generally, but that's really important. It really allows you to show up differently when you feel supported and you're, that you fit in and that you're valued. So it's important to ensure that you find that connection. Maybe I'll take a couple of additional things that weren't covered. So just again, the people, right? So are these people that you can spend time with? You're going to, in most organizations, you spend a lot of time with the people you're working with. Now we're hybrid a bit, but at least when you're in the office, you're in the office with people. Are these people you can actually connect with? How do people talk to each other, right? Are they respectful? Is there cursing, right? I mean, like just how people interact with each other were things that I focused on, particularly in the finance area. I agreed with the growth opportunities, the ability to move roles. It's important to understand the role you're coming into. Where does that role go? To the point earlier, I was going to say, like, they ask you where you're going to be in 5 years. Well, where could you be, right? Is this role locked into one place, or is it actually teed up in a way where you have the opportunity to grow? And you'd be surprised in some cases, it does come down to the person, and maybe you're given an opportunity that they didn't initially expect, but there could be opportunity. There could be roles you're interviewing for or companies you're looking at where they're bringing you into a particular position. So understanding that. And then the final piece I'll mention is your direct manager, right? So who's the person who is responsible for you and who's compensating you? That's pretty critical that you are comfortable and you understand who's playing that role, and that you're comfortable with that person.
Great. Thank you both so much. So I think we have time for one more question of this portion. So as I mentioned before, we do have a lot of young entrepreneurs on this call, or alumni who might run a portion of their job and work with constituents of the organization. So what marketing or customer service tactics do you find useful in engaging external constituents? And Ben, we're going to start with you and then go to Dr. Ross.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I have to say the marketing component of a startup business and getting that right, it's basically math and science, and the median changes used to be, you had a cart on the Silk Road and you're hawking things, and went down to walking up and down Pearl Street with a sandwich board, and and then there's advertising in direct mail, and now of course there's search engine optimization and pay-per-click and so on, right? But that's all math, the component of your business that is the product is everything, because anybody can be good at the math. You've got to come up with a product that is differentiated. That if you're going to try to compete with everybody else who's doing the same thing, the only way you're going to win that battle is by having a better price. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to take on companies on a price battle. Those companies are enormous and they're very good at what they do, and they can do things cheaper than small entrepreneurs can. There are some exceptions. Again, Amazon. It's amazing what obviously that has happened there, but that's so rare. So my point there is, marketing, the first and most important part of marketing is to make sure your product is differentiated. If it's differentiated, you can maintain a margin that can allow you to screw things up and still make money, and you will. So you've got to get something. When I say differentiated, that means differentiated in a good way. It can't be like, oh, this is really crappy, so this is I'm talking about something that is needed, wanted, and you're doing it differently. And then you create that, and it's sort of a purple cow. There's a book out called Purple Cow, and it talks about creating something different, because all the marketing is just white noise after a while, all the crap we get. But create something different, like a purple cow, and people stop and look. And you don't even have to spend much marketing money at all to get people to stop and look when your product's different.
So for me and so in addition to serving as a regional director with Boys and Girls Clubs of America, I have a consulting and executive coaching firm called Game Changers Professional Services, GPS. And a lot of my business, actually all of my business, is tied directly to me, my brand, my reputation, my expertise, my my knowledge of and my being a content expert, if you will. I'll throw those air quotes there. So that's something that's really, really important for me. And today, where everyone is a self-proclaimed content expert, going back to what Ben said, being able to really differentiate what I do and how I do it has been really, really important for how I'm able to attract, secure, and sustain clients. One of the things I'll say is that had I not made some really key decisions along the way in terms of getting involved with professional organizations, certain leadership development fellowships that not only allowed me to expand my knowledge base and skill set, but also allowed me to expand my network. So going through things like Leadership Greater Chicago, the Impact Leadership Emerging Leaders Program, and things of that nature, joining certain professional organizations were really, those things really allowed me to build my base that's now able to support business development today. So some of my business is built right now based on people, not just the people who I know, but those who know me. So I'm never one who's able to like self-promote really, really well. That's always been kind of difficult for me. But I've let my track record kind of do the talking. So aligning a lot of my business with the work that I currently do, a lot of my business comes directly from Boys and Girls Clubs partners. And my current workplace knows that and understands that I also do consulting business that doesn't distract from my work and doesn't compete with my work. So building those professional networks is absolutely key. Being a real true content level expert and understanding what I don't know and where my niche lies is really important to marketing, as I share with folks what my capacity is, where I believe I can fit. And the biggest thing is like just relationships, making those key connections. And I will not work with every client, even if they're able to like meet my rates, my compensation rates, because I'm really, really intentional since I've not invested into full-time running GPS. So I'm really, really intentional with the clients I work with. And I only right now work with clients who have who are working on a national scale or working in really key spaces where I have a visceral connection and where I think I can support systems change. So part of the marketing, again, is just really knowing who you are, building that reputation and building that brand intentionally over the years, really being cognizant about what you learn, who you meet, and who knows you are some really critical components to being able to market as you decide to go forward as an entrepreneur, especially if it's within this service industry where who you are and how you show up matters a lot.
Jamie, can I add something really quickly? Was Jamie frozen?
Yes, of course. I think I'm back. Go for it.
I was just going to say, from the corporate consulting standpoint on a customer service slant, really simple. At Mercer, we always talked about you need to understand the client's need.
Yes.
How to meet that need, make them look good to their leaders, make their job easier in some way. And that allows you to add value. It allows you to become a trusted advisor. So you got the clients and their needs, meet those needs, make them look good, make them successful in some way. And that goes a long way for customer service.
Great, thank you so much. Any other comments on this question before we move on to Q&A with alumni, which I think an alum has their hands raised, so probably good transition here.
So we'll go ahead and kick it off with questions that you all have for either specific advisors or for the group as a whole. A couple of you have DM'd me already. Keep the questions coming, or if you want to ask it live, Vicky setting the example and raising her hand so we can do that too. Vicky, I'll let you go first.
Okay, so I'm going to try to articulate my question in the best way possible. This is for Roslind. So I currently am a business owner. I own and operate 2 businesses. One is Securing Degrees, where I help students get scholarships for college. The other one is Securing Grants, where I help organizations get funding, like grants to fund their initiatives and programs. I also work full-time for Ernst & Young as a consultant. And so my question is, you talked about how you are a director at Boys and Girls Club, but you also have your own company on the side. And I just want to know, how did you navigate, being in these spaces of having these clients, who are at these high statuses, but you can't just say like, hey, I have my businesses on the side, I do this, so like, how did you navigate that in a way where your current company supports what you do as well? I guess that's my question.
No, that's a really, really good question. And for me, so I've only, my career actually started with Boys and Girls Club back in the 90s, even though I'm only 27. But I've worked with the national office as a consultant since 2020. And as I went through the interview process, that's something that was one of my questions. What are your thoughts or rules or requirements related to any external work, especially work that may be very similar, most times exactly the same as the work that I do in my day job? And my organization is primarily concerned with customer service, as Denise talked about, and the ability for me to consistently perform at a high level to meet the ever-changing needs of all of the customers and clients within my portfolio. As long as there's no disruption of services, that's like just part of the agreement. And I have conversations with my supervisor about things that I'm taking on. And there have even been times I've seen some alignment. So one of my clients, which is an amazing organization located in Chicago, they focus on behavioral health, racial equity lens. I've been able to introduce them to Boys and Girls Club, really inform and support some of the work that we're doing. So the biggest thing for me has been open and honest communication. I don't try to hide it. I don't play around with it. I'm very upfront. And in the event that there's a conflict, I probably wouldn't, no shade to anyone with YMCA, but I probably wouldn't go and do any work for them. So I mentioned that I'm really intentional about clients that I take on, but I do my best to manage my work, manage my time, and manage expectations through clear, I mentioned earlier, the solve for most things is communication. So being super transparent with that, but also I believe that I'm in a place in my career where I can very openly and freely share that. And for me, that's one of those non-monetary benefits that I talked about earlier with my company, letting them know, hey, this is something that I do in addition to this day work, and I want to know that it's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would just jump in to add, depending on the company that you're with, and maybe it's like the risk lens to my job, or these things that I focus on, but depends on the company that you're with. You need to understand what agreements you might have signed that provide that flexibility for you, or what the limitations are that you might have given your role, particularly if it is like an EY, where I'm not sure what your business is, but you might be working on a project and there might be certain independence reasons why they need you to be doing or not doing certain things. So there's that lens to it as well that you should just keep in mind, because at the end of the day, that's the job right now that's paying the bills, right? That you need to focus on. And hopefully you get to the point where if you decide to do something completely entrepreneurial, you jump to that at the right time. But it's just important to make sure those types of conflicts are also considered.
Yeah, know exactly what the rules are. Like one of the people, I hire other consultants as subcontractors. And one of my current subcontractors is a executive leader at a state agency in the state of Illinois. And their process is if you're doing any external work, whether it's a part-time job or a consultant, there's an actual form that they have to submit with the details and scope to ensure that there are no conflicts of interest. Again, for me with the Boys and Girls Club, as long as I'm not competing, as long as I'm not, and just in terms of my values, I would never do any of that anyway, but I have to keep them assured that I will not try to make connections with any existing donors or partners without first consulting those who are the decision makers in those regards. So know the rules, know the landscape.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both. This next one is for Denise. Denise, someone loved your comment about managing up and would love to hear more about what it means and just what sorts of communication you've experienced that have been most helpful when it comes to managing up.
Absolutely. So I think I said this in other workshops, not all managers are created equal. Most of the time, people get promoted to manager because they have mastered the technical pieces of their job, so to speak, right? And so since they're excelling, it's thought you can manage others. Many times companies, though, fall down on training their managers on being effective, having effective conversations, developing their employees, things like that. And also, by the way, everybody's just running ragged, busy, juggling many things. Most managers, they're still delivering work, but they have to manage others as well. So to make their job easier, and so that you stay on their radar, one thing I recommend is, one, make sure you're having one-on-one meetings with your manager on some kind of cadence. Maybe early on when you first start, maybe it's once a week. Maybe then you go to every other week. Depending on the work situation, maybe it's once a month, but on some regular cadence, have a one-on-one meeting with your manager. So this is all from the corporate perspective. When you come to that meeting, you come to that meeting prepared. I like to have a slide. Here are the things that I've been working on. This is what I've accomplished. That one slide, you send it to them. They get into a meeting with their manager, who may ask about others on their team. Hey, what is so-and-so doing? She or he may be very busy and say, oh, Denise sent me a slide. Let me go back to that slide. You're now equipping them to advocate for you, to talk about your accomplishments. So that's managing up, making sure you get the time to ask your questions and have a little face time to share what you're working on and your accomplishments. Have an opportunity to get feedback. That's very important. Don't shy away from getting feedback, because when you're early in your career, you're going to make mistakes, like Roslind said, and you learn from them. But if you don't take the opportunity to get that information so that you can improve, you might not get the outcome that you want at the end of the year. So all this to say, you want to manage, the year so that you can get the best performance review you can get at the end of the year. So that's kind of what I mean by managing up.
A follow-up to that, and also kind of on the flip side, because we have some alums in the call that are in managerial positions and are managing others or are hiring employees for their businesses. Do you have any suggestions or advice on how to be a good manager?
Yeah, so on the flip side, making sure you're meeting with your employees regularly so they can get that time with you to get direction. At the beginning of every year, make sure you're taking the time to help them to prepare a development plan. What skills should they be building during the year? Maybe what kind of projects should you try to put them on so that they can get that experience? Many times, the Gen Z professionals today, they're job hopping because they're looking for growth. And if they don't see that they can get the growth at their current company, that they can't get the development, the continuous learning opportunities, they may look at the next company who reaches out to them, and recruiters are always calling. So you want to make sure that your people feel that they can stay and grow and be developed. And the best way to do that is to stay close with them, have regular meetings with them, start the year with a plan, giving them a plan. These are the skills I want to help you develop this year. Let's work on the types of projects, getting input from them on their interests, so you can get them on projects that they're interested in so that they can grow.
I'll use Denise's quote again. Just as she said, no managers are created equally, you all have to keep in mind that no employees are created equally as well. So making sure you're doing those things that she said. She talked earlier about providing that one-on-one time. It's so important that you get to know who your folks are individually, developing positive relationships with your team members based on trust and respect and empathy, understanding what their individual strengths are, as well as those weaknesses, opportunities for growth, we'll say, and what their aspirations are, and just really showing genuine interest in their professional growth and well-being. Like that's like really, really important for managers, especially as I think it was Eric who brought up belonging earlier. Those are some of those key things that help to create that environment that fosters belonging.
Dr. Raj, you made me think of one other, oh shoot, and I just lost it. Oh, having difficult conversations. So those who are managing others, that's a skill. Being able to give difficult feedback. If you can find a little YouTube video, or if your company has like an e-learning on demand that you can take, giving difficult feedback is not an easy thing for everyone to do. It's an art, so that you can give the feedback but still keep the employee motivated. That's a big learning for people managers.
Maybe one other thing I'll add is, especially these days with like hybrid work, like how you want to work, either as a team or one-on-one with the person that you're managing, right? When are you going to be in? When are you not going to be in? When are you going to be online? When should people expect a response? Should people email you or not email you, or call you, or should they call you? Should they text you? Should they, right? Like setting up that and being intentional about it will, I think, mitigate a lot of sort of the noise that comes into play these days.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Quick plug for the book, Crucial Conversations. I put it in the chat. Talks exactly about how to handle those difficult conversations, and worth the read for sure. Switching gears a little bit, this question's open to all panelists. What did you learn about financial success as you grew your career, or what do you wish you would have known?
Say that question one more time.
Yeah, what did you learn about financial success? We can just say finances as you grew your career, or what are some things you wished you would have known?
So one thing, so within a company, it's important to understand how your company makes money, whether it's your company or the company that you work for. Understand the metrics that are discussed, because it will help you have a higher level conversation. So that's from a business standpoint. Personally, start saving early. Educate yourself on investing. Start saving your 401k early. They give you free money. They match what you put in. Don't let that opportunity slip. That's very important to keep in mind. Budgeting. All that's important to learn in your 20s.
Yeah, I'll just build on that point. It's, people use the term in finance, they say time value of money, like how money compounds over time. Looking back now, whatever it is, 27 years, you realize like that's really true. And so whether it's 401k or even, you should do 401k first because of the matching. Obviously, that's key if someone's going to add to whatever your savings is. And so that's really important. You should try to do as much of that as you can. And then even outside that, the idea that money like grows over time, over long periods of time, it actually does. Saving even small amounts early equal bigger amounts 20 years later. And it's hard to, like, time goes really fast when you look back and the money grows. So I think that's critical. And one other thing I'll just add, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so sometimes you feel like, where you want to be here, you want to get there really, really fast, or you want to make this amount really, really fast. Like it kind of comes with time. And so it's also easier to say this on the other side, because I didn't understand it or think about it this way when I was starting out either. But taking the time, developing, all the stuff we were talking about before, developing the relationships, learning, it pays dividends later on.
Yeah. For me, as a first generation college student from really humble beginnings, I didn't have basic financial literacy skills, nor did I understand or even have a defined relationship with money, if that makes any sense. So I didn't understand how to build credit and manage debt and the importance of that, and that being crucial for just overall long-term financial success. Learning about credit scores and responsible borrowing and strategies for managing debt, that would have been really pivotal in my making some better, more informed choices and in avoiding a lot of the common pitfalls. Something that's not necessarily a financial management strategy, but really important in determining your income is negotiating your salary and benefits. I talked about that, understanding what all of those benefits are, but being willing to negotiate your salary. Once that job, oftentimes we are nervous and even embarrassed to do that. But I found that oftentimes, unless it's a company, and there aren't too many of them, that functions on full transparency and what they advertise is what the rate is, most times folks expect that you're going to counter the offer. So learning some of those negotiation skills, particularly when it comes to salary and benefits, can really kind of determine what your baseline is, because how often does people say, well, what's your current salary? So it really fosters where you're growing up from financially. And there's more that will be contributed to your 401k or 403b or whatever investment account, and more that you have to save.
And many times, and it's not always out there, but in many states, there's now a law that says they need to actually publish the salary. So sometimes it make it hard to actually find that, but most jobs in many states actually need to publish a salary range.
Yeah.
Colorado's one of them.
Yep.
I'll just say, if you don't ask, you won't get.
That's right.
And just a really, really quick story based on what Eric said about investing over time. It's a marathon. I always tell my kids who are in their 20s the story about my roommate after college. We both started engineering jobs at Eli Lilly and Company. For a graduation gift, they gave her a Janus mutual fund. So I'm dating myself now. And her dad told her to put $50 in a month. $50. This is more than 30 years ago. So I'm 30 years past my 20s. No, this was years ago. Imagine how big that pot of money is because of dollar cost averaging. So if you can start saving early, educate yourself on investing, start investing a little bit. I'm a real big fan of ETFs. It will pay dividends later. It's a marathon. I totally agree with Eric.
And don't get caught up in the notion that you don't have enough to invest, right? Pay, or to start saving, pay yourself first. I wish I would have committed to that. I really wish I would have invested that $50 a month. Carve out whatever that amount is and be as disciplined as you can to make that investment into your sustainable future. So important.
For the sake of time, I'm going to go to one final question. This is going to be for Denise and Eric, but other advisors feel free to chime in as well. Y'all mentioned earlier that some of you, or all of you almost, have had some type of coach, mentor, executive coach throughout your career. How did you find them? What prompted you to get one? How did you get set up with a coach for your career? We'll start with Eric first.
Sure. So my formal coaching really came through an organization. So as part of a review, they were doing like a 360 review where they get feedback from the people you work for, the people that work for you, and your peers. And they hired an external person to come in and do that assessment. So they were the ones having the conversations and, you know, people filling out forms. And after they compile that feedback, they then offered an executive coaching program on the back of that feedback. And so mine came through the formal one came through the organization, and then had a period of time to work with the individual. I've had other informal types of coaching, either mostly word of mouth, people who have spoken with other people that they then trusted. So I've engaged with some people more informally, but I found the most benefit, which is helpful. But the most beneficial was this sort of formal coaching engagement that I had. I'll just mention on the back of that, I think, all right, well, that was kind of given to me through my company. There are a lot of organizations, especially these days online, that offer very similar products that you can get what I got out of that off of things that are actually available online, or even that you can engage yourself and don't need a corporation to put with these days.
So similar to Eric, when I was the U.S. Learning and Development Leader at Mercer, I was given an executive coach. So someone on our executive leadership team, another female who I could talk to as I was developing to go further, advance further at the company. But early on, I would encourage you, take a look at who's doing well. And then you go talk to those people about a strength of theirs that you want to build. You have to kind of learn to build your network. How do you get to know people? Do things outside of your job within the firm. Help set up the Christmas party. Join an employee resource group. That'll allow you to get to know others, and you can see who's doing well in what. And you build your board of directors. There may be someone who understands, they present really well. Go talk to them. How did you become such a good presenter? And you'd be surprised how willing people are to share. I see you're really good at analytics. What are some resources that you use to build your skills? And you kind of have your, a few people that you go to for different things. So before you can get the executive coach while you're early in your career, you can own your development by finding other people to learn from.
Yeah, I will say a huge ditto to that. I'm sure you all have heard the phrase, if you're the smartest person in the room, find a new room.
Right.
It's so important that you surround yourself with folks who are great, folks who can pour into you, folks who know more than you know about certain topics, about different things. Having that level of diversity within your squad, right? Personal life, but also especially within the workplace. So as Denise said, identifying those folks who could be part of your board of directors, or the key ingredients that you can find in your kitchen cabinet, right? Identifying who those folks are and creating some of those informal mentorship and coaching opportunities that can also lead to one of the things we haven't really talked about is sponsorship. And when people will embrace you and help to, tell your story and get you promoted and get you into certain rooms and at certain tables, that's another workshop. But making sure that you really identify what some of your growth and development needs are, and develop those informal mentoring connections and relationships. And then from a formal perspective, finding out if it's something that your organization offers. I wasn't even aware that Boys and Girls Clubs offered a lot of the learning opportunities until I was invited to apply for one. Someone said to me, one of my sponsors said, have you considered doing X? You can apply for this award. It's really competitive, and I wasn't aware of it. So find out what your organization offers, and also really make sure that you have a professional development plan. Make sure you're holding your, I know not all companies invest in those one-on-ones that were talked about earlier, or even frequent reviews. So are you getting a mid-year review? Are you receiving an annual review? And does that come with a professional development plan connected to it? With that, within that plan, you can say, hey, I would like for you all to invest in or connect me with an executive coach who can help me to hone in on or foster X, Y, and Z skills. So there are some things that you may be able to get directly through your current company.
We're gonna take a group photo, the infamous group photo. Okay, a smiling picture in 3, 2, 1, cheese. Nice. Okay, second one. 3, 2, 1, something funny. Cheese. Love, 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 love.